Let me tell you something. Iran just poked the American eagle, and the eagle hit back hard. U.S. forces launched what Central Command called powerful strikes on Iran after Tehran, in what I can only describe as a breathtaking act of stupidity, attacked 3 commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz. And President Trump, at the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey, looked the world's cameras dead in the eye and said, "These are evil, sick people." And then he declared the ceasefire over, just like that. Now we have missiles flying, oil sanctions back on the books, the Strait of Hormuz in play, and the President of the United States calling Iranian negotiators. And I want to make sure I get this right because it's beautiful. Lying scum and a cancer that needs to be excised. My friends, that is not a diplomatic cable. That is a man who has had enough. We are going to get into all of it today. The strikes, the ceasefire, what Iran was thinking, which I promise you will be a very short segment. We've also got a Democratic Senate candidate in Michigan who apparently forgot he ever said what he very clearly said on tape. And the Southern Poverty Law Center. Oh, the Southern Poverty Law Center has been charged with federal fraud. I am having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. I'm Rick LeBeau. This is Rush Hour. And we are just getting started. So here is what happened. And I want to walk you through this because the drive-by media is going to scramble these eggs 6 ways to Sunday and serve them to you looking like a gourmet omelet when it is, in fact, a mess they made. Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the mullahocracy, the regime that has been chanting death to America since 1979. That's 47 years, folks, of the same chant, the same fist in the air, the same burning of our flag in the streets, decided in their infinite wisdom to attack 3 commercial vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the Strait of Hormuz, for those of you who may not spend your evenings with a globe, this is one of the most strategically important waterways on the planet. Roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply moves through that narrow passage. You mess with the Strait of Hormuz, you are not just messing with ships. You are messing with the global economy. You are messing with every gas station in America. You are messing with U.S., and there was a ceasefire in place, a U.S. brokered ceasefire. Iran agreed to it. They signed on. They shook hands, or whatever the Iranian equivalent is of shaking hands. And then they went and attacked the ships anyway. You know, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You cannot negotiate with people who view negotiation as a tactical pause. The Iranians do not want peace. They want the appearance of peace long enough to reload. This is not complicated. This is not some deep mystery. This is what they do. This is what they have always done. And the Trump administration, God bless them, they figured that out. Now let me tell you what the response looked like. Central Command launched what they described as powerful strikes on Iran. Not a warning shot, not a strongly worded press release, which is what the previous several administrations would have sent. Powerful strikes. The kind of thing that rattles windows and makes regimes reconsider their life choices. And simultaneously, the Trump administration reimposed oil sanctions on Iran. You want to hit us in the Hormuz? Fine. We'll hit your wallets. We'll hit your exports. We'll choke off the revenue stream that funds the whole operation. This is what dealing with Iran from a position of strength looks like, and I want everybody to appreciate something. When Trump left office the first time, Iran was on its knees. The maximum pressure campaign had worked. The economy was cratering. The Ayatollah's crowd was in genuine trouble. Then the Biden administration comes in, loosens the screws, starts negotiating, lets billions of dollars flow back, and what happens? Iran gets their breath back. Iran gets their confidence back. Iran gets their weapons programs back on track. Every time we have tried to be reasonable with this regime, they have taken our reasonableness and used it as cover every single time. And I want to be clear about something here. President Trump at that NATO summit, he was not performing for the cameras. Well, okay, a little bit for the cameras. That's fine. That's politics. But he was not bluffing. When he sat down with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and started unloading, he called Iranian negotiators lying scum and a cancer that needs to be excised. Now, the foreign policy establishment, our friends at the Council on Foreign Relations, the Brookings Institution crowd, all those people who gave us 47 years of managing Iran instead of confronting Iran, they are absolutely horrified by this kind of language. Good. They should be. Their approach produced a nuclear-hungry, terror-sponsoring regime that attacks our ships. Maybe some straight talk is overdue. Here's what I want you to understand about the Strait of Hormuz situation. Iran chose this moment. They chose it at the NATO summit. They chose it while Trump was surrounded by world leaders, while cameras were on him, while the whole world was watching. Think about that for a second. Either they thought it would embarrass him, constrain him, make him look bad, or they are so ideologically committed to their own destruction that they simply cannot stop themselves. I'm going with door number 2, frankly, because what actually happened, Trump did not look constrained. Trump looked like a man who had been given the excuse he needed, and he took it. He took it immediately. Now, here's where it gets a little more textured, folks, and I want to be honest with you about this. The ceasefire is now what Trump says it is, over. That means we are back to a more confrontational posture. The strikes have happened. The sanctions are back. The question is, what does Iran do next? They have a few options. They can escalate further, which would be unwise, given what just happened to them. They can try to find a back channel and start talking again, which is probably what they'll do because the sanctions are going to bite. Or they can do what they always do, make a lot of noise, burn some flags, claim they hit back harder than they did, and wait to see if American political will holds. That last option depends entirely on whether the American media and the American left can manufacture enough outrage to undermine the administration's resolve. And the drive-by media, my friends, is already working overtime on that. Already we've got the word tirade appearing in headlines describing Trump's perfectly sensible and accurate description of the Iranians as scum. A tirade. When a man tells the truth forcefully, they call it a tirade. Meanwhile, 47 years of appeasement, of engagement, of pretending that the next deal is the deal that finally moderates the mullahs. That never gets called a failure. That gets called sophisticated diplomacy. I'll take the tirade, thank you very much. And look, I want to briefly touch on the NATO summit itself, because there's something rich happening there. Dick Durbin, Senate Minority Whip, Democrat from Illinois, admitted on CBS News, that Trump has wisely called on NATO allies to spend more on their own defense. He said it's not an unreasonable ask. Dingy Dick Durbin agreeing with Trump on NATO. Folks, when you've lost Durbin, you've lost the argument. Every Republican who spent the last decade being told that demanding NATO allies pay their fair share was somehow dangerous or insulting or un-American, I hope you're savoring this moment. I certainly am. Trump has been right about NATO burden sharing since before he was in politics. The allies have been freeloading on American defense dollars for decades, and when someone finally says it plainly enough, the response is, eventually, compliance. Several countries have increased their defense spending. Some are at or approaching the 5% target, and even Dingy Dick thinks that's wise. Speaking of NATO, Trump also went after Spain, called them a wasted cause. said he wants to end all trade with them over their refusal to hit the 5% defense spending target. Now, Spain has been one of the most stubborn holdouts on this. They've been sitting around 1.5% of GDP on defense for years. They are, in NATO terms, what we might charitably call a passenger, riding the bus without buying a ticket. And Trump's instinct, which is always to go nuclear rhetorically before negotiating, has a logic to it that the sophisticates never want to admit. You threaten to end trade. Spain panics. Spain suddenly discovers that maybe they can find more money for defense after all. Whether he follows through or not is almost beside the point. He is negotiating. The drive-by media will tell you this is chaos. What it is leverage. All right, let's hit the roundup, and I have got some beauties for you today. First up, Michigan, the Democratic Senate primary. Abdul El Sayed. Now, if you don't know El Sayed, he's a far-left candidate, the kind of guy who makes Bernie Sanders look like a Chamber of Commerce Republican. He ran for governor of Michigan back in 2018, lost in the primary. Now he's back, running for Senate, and he has a little problem. Audio has surfaced. Audio, my friends, the most inconvenient format for a politician who lies. Audio has surfaced of El Sayed explicitly, clearly, without ambiguity, supporting the defunding of police departments. His position now? I never backed defunding the police. That's what he says. He says it with a straight face. He's running against Haley Stevens, and they had a debate where the whole thing got into corporate cash and bowing to billionaires. I love that phrase, bowing to billionaires. Democrats love that phrase right up until they need billionaire money, which is always. But the defunding tape, this is the thing. These people said what they said. They said it proudly. They said it during the great ideological fever of 2020, when the entire left decided that the police were the problem, defunding them was the solution, and anyone who disagreed was a racist. They said it. They said it into microphones. They said it on tape. They posted it on social media. They went on television and said it. And now every single one of them, when they want to run for something, suddenly can't recall having said it. I never backed defunding the police. You're on tape, pal. You're literally on tape. The audio exists. It has been played. People can hear it with their own ears. This is a man who wants to be a United States Senator from Michigan, and he is standing there telling Michigan voters something that a recording of himself proves is false. That is not a misremembering. That is not a nuanced evolution of position. That is a lie. And the voters of Michigan deserve better. Even the Democratic voters of Michigan, who I don't agree with on much, deserve better than a guy who will look them in the eye and deny what's on tape. The all-knowing, all-sensing, all-seeing Maha Ricky predicts this tape is not going away, not in this primary, and certainly not in a general election. Next, the Southern Poverty Law Center. Oh, where do I even begin? The SPLC, for decades the self-appointed arbiter of who in America is a hateful extremist. They issue these lists, these hate group designations, and the media treats them like they came down from the mountain on stone tablets. If the SPLC says you're a hate group, CNN runs with it, MSNBC runs with it, your Wikipedia page gets updated, and suddenly you're radioactive. They've labeled Christian organizations as hate groups. They've gone after mainstream conservative groups. They've used their hate group designation as a political weapon for years, and the media ate it up. The media treated the SPLC as if it were some independent, sober, authoritative watchdog. Well, they have now pleaded not guilty to federal charges that they defrauded their own donors. by not disclosing that some of the donated money was being used to pay informants inside extremist organizations. Now, the charges are the charges. They're not convicted. I understand that. But just savor this for a moment. The organization that built its entire reputation and fundraising empire on exposing fraud, deception, and bad actors is standing in federal court pleading not guilty to fraud. You genuinely could not write this. This is an organization that raised hundreds of millions of dollars. They had a massive endowment, a big chunk of it stashed offshore in the Cayman Islands, which was reported years ago, based on telling donors, "Give us your money and we'll fight hate." And the allegation is that they were not being straight with those donors about how the money was actually being used. The SPLC has always been less about fighting hate and more about defining hate in a way that conveniently targets their political opponents. That's the game. They are a political operation that masqueraded as a civil rights organization, and the media never called them on it because the SPLC's enemies list lined up perfectly with the media's enemies list. Maybe now, some of our friends in the press will revisit how many stories they ran, citing the SPLC as an authoritative source. Probably not. But a man can dream. And finally, very briefly, a story that is sitting right here in my formerly nicotine-stained fingers and I cannot let pass. Josh Turek, Democratic Senate candidate in Iowa, Paralympic gold medalist, which is a real achievement, I will say that. I have full respect for what the man accomplished athletically. But he apparently took over $20,000 in taxpayer-funded per diem payments. That's the daily expense allowance that legislators get, while missing nearly 60% of his votes in 2026. 58.7% of his votes, gone, absent, not there, collecting the money, not doing the job. Now, this is the Democratic Party. This is the party that tells you they are for the people. They want to tax you more, regulate you more, spend more of your money, and their candidates can't even show up to vote. Cashing the checks, skipping the work, and asking you to send them to Washington, where, I assume, they plan to cash bigger checks and skip more work. For the people, sure. Folks, on a day like today, when U.S. forces are striking Iran, when the Strait of Hormuz is in play, when the whole world is watching what America does, I want to leave you with this thought. America is not a country that goes looking for fights. We are not an imperial power. We do not want to be in the Middle East patrolling shipping lanes for the rest of history. But when evil pushes, and Iran is evil, I will not dress that up for you. When evil pushes, the only answer that evil understands is a harder pushback. Flowers and strongly worded statements are not a foreign policy. They are a surrender dressed up in nice language. What you are seeing right now is a president who came into office having watched the previous several administrations spend years negotiating with a regime that had no intention of holding up its end of any deal. And he has decided, rightly, that the only way to change the behavior is to change the calculus. You attack our ships, we hit you back. You violate a ceasefire, the ceasefire is done. You think we're going to keep talking while you reload? We're not. There are people out there in the faculty lounges, in the State Department hallways, on the set of Morning Joe, who are absolutely beside themselves right now. They think this is reckless. They think Trump calling the Iranians lying scum is beneath the dignity of the office. My friends, 47 years of dignified statements produced a regime with ballistic missiles, proxy armies in 4 countries, and the ambition for a nuclear weapon. Maybe it's time to try something different. Don't doubt me on this one. I'm Rick LeBow. This has been Rush Hour. Same time tomorrow, if they let us back on.